Welcome back to today's video. Today I'm going to go over a chess game that I played with the black pieces a couple of days ago. Now, if you've seen one of my previous comments on a YouTube video, it's how I'm basically trying to restart my chess account just because I want to give myself more of a challenge and just sort of start from the bottom again. Now, anyways, this is a game where I actually made a mistake. I was like stimming, just pre-moving when I shouldn't have been because my opponent was taking too long to move, and I accidentally blundered because, I was stimming by just pre-moving, and they played their move, and I ended up blundering a piece, but I ended up making a strong comeback, and I think this game will help a lot of people, especially at the lower elo, deal with blundering pieces and trying to win the game again. Now, out of respect for the opponent, I won't have the names shown as I usually do. But without further ado, I'm with the black pieces, so let's just begin. So my opponent starts with e4. I play c5, Sicilian defense, because I love the Sicilian. I play it, I would say, about 90% of my games against e4. Now here, knight f3, pawn to d6, pretty standard stuff. Bishop c4, not usually the best move. Typically against d6, you'll see people play this move pawn to d4. Just go back, you play pawn to d4 with ideas of trading. This pawn, bring the knight, knight to f6, knight to c3, and then black has a number of moves. You can go for a nice knight or a very terrible dragon. If you've seen why I hated the dragon, check out my video on how Bobby Fischer destroyed the Sicilian defense. Anyways, bishop c4 and knight c6, knight c3. And actually, I'm not going to show the eval bar either, simply because I think that in this game it won't be beneficial. Or actually, no, yeah, on second thought, I'm not going to be showing the eval bar simply because it won't be beneficial for this game. Just know that right now the position's equal. Try to use your best judgment to figure out what's equal or not, and occasionally I'll just hop in and tell you guys what the eval is saying. So now it's about even. White has plus 0.3, sorry, advantage. So about equal with white having some ideas. Here I played pawn to g6. If you notice, this is the computer recommended line. Actually, I don't know why it's showing the best move arrows because I'm not in game review right now. I guess I am technically. Okay, anyways, we're just gonna have to deal with it. Yeah, so here, pawn to g6 with ideas of fianchettoing my bishop. I'm a big fan of this setup. I know I say I don't like the dragon. I don't, but against sort of these obscure Sicilian openings, I think that just having a nice fianchettoed bishop is good in any case. In fact, if you notice a lot of my games that I play, I love the fianchettoed bishop. I fianchetto at least one of my bishops. Sometimes you can fianchetto both your bishops. I think double fianchetto is incredibly strong, but it can get very difficult to do because essentially you're wasting a tempo. Not really wasting it, but you're playing the sort of modern approach where you're pushing up on fianchettoing your bishop. So you basically waste two tempos, whatever, against the center, as opposed to just putting pawns, knights, and trying to fight for it. Now here, my opponent castles. I play bishop g7, pawn to d4, which is a big mistake. It's a big inaccuracy, see the computer says. And it's because now this pawn is basically just hanging. So I take back, and you're probably wondering what happens if they take here. If they take here, very simply, I can just take with the bishop instead of the knight. If I take with the knight, it's not terrible, but it's just not as good as this because now your knight gets moved back and now you're losing a tempo once again. So here my opponent plays this move, knight to d5. Very bad move, very inaccurate move, as the computer says. Instead, he was supposed to retreat the knight simply to put pressure on this. If it pushes, just take one of two ways. But instead, he pushes. Here I play this move, pawn to e6. Very nice idea, kicking out this knight that he just pushed. So his knight's going to have to go one of two ways. Can't go here because it'll be taken. So it's going to have to go back here. And now I play this move, knight g e7. Now, computer doesn't like this move. I think it's actually fine. at obviously playing against a grandmaster is not fine, but I think that this move is better because I have ideas of supporting this knight and eventually fighting for this d5 square. Computer likes this, but honestly, I don't like this. Because if they push it, yeah, okay, you can say, okay, I have two pieces protecting it, but I think that this will just be an ugly structure later on and a long-term disadvantage for me. This is what I was thinking in the moment. Now, obviously, computer says I'm wrong, as computers do, but remember, when playing chess, you want to look at the right move, not necessarily the best move. In this position, I thought this was the right move to make. And right now, just for some context, before this move, I had minus 1.29 advantage, so I had a big advantage with the black pieces. After this move, it goes to 0.76, negative 0.76. So I lose about one, not really one, about like half of my advantage, more or less. Like 0.5, something like that. Yeah. And here, my opponent here puts his bishop here, basically pinning my knight here. But instead, once again, he was supposed to retreat this knight because this knight is a target long term. If I push this pawn, you can't push this anymore. So this knight is under threat, so it's going to have to move back, and you will be essentially wasting a tempo once again. So instead, he tries to pin my king. Very quickly, I just castle. Computer likes this. I don't really think this move is necessary yet, in my opinion, simply because back here, if I were to play this and he takes, I take. Yeah, I have 3 pawns in the center with this pawn basically being unsupported, but I think that just castling first is just smarter. Computer says it's fine, but obviously this move it likes much more. Here, my opponent makes a big mistake. He plays his rook here. Very big mistake because now I have a chance to win this knight. Not really win it, but attack it with my pawn. So that's what I do. I push my pawn. Knight goes back here. It's an okay move, not the best move. It's not the best because I can just take, and it's winning. Now here, I don't take it. I actually don't want to take it simply because I have just an idea to basically lock the center. This is what I'm trying to do this game. I want to lock the center, and this comes crucial later on in the video. Now here, I lock the center with the dark pieces. Typically, you don't want to do this when you still have your dark squared bishop active, but here I'm basically saying I don't care if my dark squared bishop is inactive. His knights are long-term disadvantages for him because of this pawn structure. If he tries to move his knight anywhere, really, I can take one of his knights. So these knights, I'm basically killing off my dark squared bishop advantage temporarily to say that his knights, they can't get developed properly. They're basically always going to be under attack by some type of pawn move. And this is how you basically want to play chess. You want to push your opponent to their limit and just make their pieces look not good. And that's, if you do that, you master that, you'll win. And here, he actually kind of sacks his knight in a sense. He does this with check. I will simply take back with my knight. I take back with my knight because if I take back with my queen, this knight is now under threat and all that pawn structure work I was just working towards is undone. So instead, I take back with the knight, and also I'm freeing up this pin, so I don't have to trade this yet. Because look, I have 2 light squared pawns now. Technically I have 5. I have these 2 here, but these 2 are sort of king safety pawns. They're not attacking pawns. So I take these 2 pawns on B and A to kill off his light squared bishop in a sense development. And same thing with me. Like, I'm killing off this light squared bishop, but that's only from one way. I can still put my bishop here and trade it off eventually if I wanted to, because he doesn't have a pawn on h3 yet. So speaking of this, bishop c4, I play this move, bishop to g4. Computer doesn't like it. It says a mistake. Instead, it likes to move pawn here, basically trying to break the center. But remember, I don't want to break the center yet, because I still think that my pawn structure, while it might look stupid, it's definitely significantly stronger and is doing a lot more than the computer necessarily says. Because think about it from a human perspective, not necessarily a computer perspective. So anyways, now he plays move h3, and I know I said I would take here, but I don't want to take here right now, because if I take here, he takes back with the queen, and this will just be a long-term, not necessarily weakness, but a long-term threat, because he has his bishop here, and he has his queen there. It's basically just going to get ugly pretty quickly, because basically I'm not going to be able to move my rook off the f8 square. I'm going to have to do some sort of pawn maneuver. I'm going to have to push a pawn to f6 if I wanted to, which simply just ruins his pawn structure even more than it already is. Remember, it's a good pawn structure. It's just difficult to work with. So here I retreat the bishop. Now pawn to b3 with ideas of fianchettoing this bishop. And here I was actually really confused. In fact, after this, I was just thinking like, okay, if he wants to fianchetto his bishop, it's not going to necessarily work in his favor. He's probably going to wants to go pawn to a3. Because if he goes pawn to b2, I have this pawn chain, which is just incredibly difficult to work with. And also, even if he goes here, I can just replace my bishop here, and this is now just, I cut off permanent king dark squares on this sort of diagonal. And now here, pawn to b5, kicking out his white squared bishop, knight c6, big mistake by me according to the computer. It's dead, it wanted this pawn break. Once again, I don't agree with this computer analysis. In fact, actually, I think it honestly works out better that I'm having the game review on, because I'm telling you, I'm basically showing you how to play the right move, not the best move, because we're still going to win this game. It's not going to be a pretty game, but it's going to be a good game. Now here, a3 with ideas of, I guess, pushing here, trying to break through the center. Not really sure. Computer likes this move, bishop to d2 with ideas of just having long-term compensation. And here I was even more confused because he pushed this pawn, but didn't fianchetto, didn't try to put his pawn here. Instead, he put this here, which is kind of, I'd have had my bishop here and a pawn here. It's just a free thing, basically. Obviously, the bishop's not here. So anyways, let the work over. Computer doesn't like it again. It thinks that the knight back here would be stronger, but here I didn't like this knight here because I can never move this knight here anymore. So I'm gonna have to reroute it somewhere like here, and I saw this move, I didn't think it was the best move. Here's fianchetto's bishop. I saw the rook here because I have ideas of pushing this eventually, and I don't want this to become a threat. Here he plays this nice move, pawn to b4. Not really nice move, take that back. Instead, what you're supposed to do is push this and get a nice like trident type of position. Instead, I do this. Once again, computer wants this pawn break. I'm not going to break this pawn. I think it's too strong to break it. Here, queen d2. Computer really hates this move. It hates this move because I slide my king out of the way because it sees this sort of long-term x-ray, and it still wants this pawn break. Now, I move this out here because what happens is I'm looking at the long term, and I don't want my knight to eventually get attacked. This is why I moved it. So if my knight gets attacked, I have plans to go here and here. But honestly, I'm thinking of long term. If I can somehow get my knight on g4, I think that would be much stronger. So the reason I move this, yes, I'm stepping into a pin, but it's not really a pin. I mean, there's 1, 2, 3. There's 3 pieces protecting from this one thing. And also, if I can get my knight back here and just even put it here, this is now 4 pieces that are just blocking this bishop. So I don't think it's necessarily wrong. Here, queen to g5, knight g8, queen takes, rook takes, knight g5, bishop e6, big mistake by me. And here is where I was stimming and I mouse slipped. I was stimming because I was counting on this, and instead I was just kept on pushing this way, and I ended up blundering my bishop. Obviously my opponent sees that, and now me being incredibly disappointed, I started just trying to close the position even more, so I trade my pieces. Obviously when you're down, you don't want to be trading pieces. But here, look, remember I said earlier I want to trade off this dark sword bishop eventually? This is what I do, I let him take it. And now I just simply have this pawn chain that even if you take, I'm going to take back, and now I have the same thing again. This is exactly what happens eventually, not now. But he locks this center, and now, for the record, the computer really hates it. In fact, it says that white has a plus 3.66 advantage. I don't think that's necessarily true. Maybe computers can figure out a way to win this, but a human most certainly will struggle with this, especially at the low level. Here, rook to f3, rook bc8, rook g3, knight e7. Once again, wants his pawn break. Now here, I'm not trading the pawn. I don't want to trade these pawns and open up the center because I feel like, to me at the time, and even now I still agree that this seems like white can just win this position pretty easily once you break it, because right now white's struggling to break through. White's going to have to be the one that makes this pawn break on the a4 square because it can't break anywhere. It's going to have to sack a bishop if it wants to break anywhere else and try to win through just pawn storming. Here, pawn h4, h6, h takes g5, h takes g5. Once again, white still has a plus 0.298 advantage, or sorry, plus 2.98 advantage. And here I'm sort of counting on this rook sliding here. This is exactly what happens. Computer really hates this move. In fact, now it gives white a plus 3.45 advantage. Instead, I don't care. I trade it off and I'm saying, okay, I have the open file. Sure, I'm down a bishop, but these pawns are much stronger than this one bishop. This bishop doesn't exist anymore. If it wants to get active, it's going to have to reroute it somewhere here. And honestly, this is the only place it can get active. It's going to have to waste 1, 2, 3 tempi. I'm going to start saying tempi from now on. 3 tempi just to get active. And sure, your computer can probably find a way to win this, but with the white pieces, but a human will struggle at this level. Unless you're like super grandmaster. I feel like even a normal grandmaster, this would be relatively difficult to break through if a black doesn't play this pawn move. Now, here, white was supposed to go here and allow en passant, because simply it would just open up the position. It doesn't go here, instead slides his king here to activate the king. I, once again, don't do this pawn break. Instead, I push my knight here because I think it's just going to be much stronger long term. Rook to g1, rook h4, bishop c1. Once again, gonna have to waste a tempi if he wants to go anywhere. And here, white still has a massive advantage, plus 3 even. Rook to h2, king g3, rook h8, bishop e2. And you see, right now, I'm just shuffling my pieces because I don't have to do anything yet. I have the defending advantage. He's gonna have to make this pawn break. Computer wants black to make the pawn break. I disagree with that strongly. Black dictates what white can do now. So white's gonna have to give up material if they want to open up this position. And in fact, look, computer wants this, you take back, and now you have a pawn advantage. And actually, if you want to count the pieces here, white only is up 2 points of material. Obviously, it's a whole bishop compared to a couple more pawns, but my pawns are much stronger than this whole game, in this whole game, than their bishops. In fact, I think there's a famous game, Fischer-Spassky, game 13, where if you look at it, Fischer just overwhelmed Spassky's rook with, I think it's like something like 5 pawns. And in fact, Fischer won that game, game 13. He played the Al Johans defense. Very super aggressive opening. Don't recommend it for beginners, but it's very nice opening. And he basically kills off Spassky's rook's activation, which is 5 pawns. So here I'm just fighting with my footing. I don't really care. I'm just giving checks when I can, sliding this rook up. And you see now, my opponent plays pawn break. Here, I don't take it. I don't take it because if I take it now, he allows his king through, and his king can sort of start to have ideas of coming here and here. So I don't take it. In fact, I want him to take it so I can take this back, and now I have a sort of locked center. I'm going to allow his A file to be open, but because he doesn't have a rook here, I'm not too threatened by it yet. He does this, and this big mistake, he's supposed to take it. He locks the position even more, that he's of taking here. So now all I have to do is just slide my king over eventually, or even just reroute my knight somewhere with ideas of taking. Pawn takes, and yeah, I open this up, and here I slide my knight back. Sure, it's giving the passed pawn, but all I have to do is just slide my king down, and I have this whole thing under control. Bishop to d2, knight c4, ideas of attacking this bishop. Pawn push. Now, I'm not going to take this bishop. Why am I not going to take this bishop? I don't have to yet. In fact, it's honestly better that I don't take this bishop, because if I take this bishop, he takes my knight back, and my knight's doing much more than his king is or his bishop is doing. So here, he pushes a pawn. Very nice. I push my king back to f8. Here likes rook to h8. I don't like moving my rook back because that restricts it too much. Now my rook will have to stay on this h file, and it won't control this line, this h line anymore. It has to stay, or file versus row, it has to control this column versus this row. So instead, I'm going to allow him to check me, and I'm just going to bring my king closer to the action. I don't like hiding my king, basically, because this is scary long term with this sort of ideas of just, it's going to be incredibly hard to deal with long term. So I'm bringing my king closer to just take this pawn here, and this is what I'm doing. Computer doesn't like it. I don't care what the computer says. Here now he plays his pawn move, and now actually the position is 0.74 for white. So white's still an advantage, slight advantage though. Here, I'm not going to take this. I don't take it because if he takes it, I take back, and now this is open, and because he has this control now, this can be much difficult because I can't give any checks anymore because of his bishop on g4. So he takes, I take back. Like I said, I wanted him to take it first because if I take back, this is much better. If I take now, he has this file open, which is closer. So here I allow him to take it. Now this is also, my pawns are much closer to each other. Sure, this is an isolated pawn, but this pawn island is beneficial because now my knight's protected. My knight is cutting off this king from moving in a number of ways. Here, bishop a4 check. Don't really care. That's just a big blunder of a piece. I don't know why he checked it. I take his bishop. He takes this pawn with his rook. I take back, and now I'm just up winning. In fact, it's minus 1.58. So I'm just shuffling. Here, I take with check, take. And you see, I'm just cleaning up now. And now this is just pretty trivial endgame stuff. You know, here, this is actually a really good idea. Okay, so here, we'll try to figure out, you obviously saw it, but here, he moves his bishop back to D1. And here, I push this pawn. I don't want to take in bishop here. Now he's protecting this pawn, so how can I win this? Well, his king is here, so I simply just push my pawn on the d square, because now his king's going to come here, and his king can't reach in time. In fact, if it's just to go here, I can just put my bishop, or my knight here, protect this pawn. And here, now, this is very just a nice calculation. It's this bishop, this light-squared bishop, became a long-term weakness. Remember I said that this pawn island is killing off the dark-squared bishop. I had pawn structure like this. This was crucial to winning the game, because I used his own bishops against him. Yeah, I give him bishop pair, but if I kill off their movement, I win the game. That's actually what happens. So here, put this king here. So how can I win this? If I take, I promote to a queen, and he has to take here. So I can push this pawn. It can't go back because I wasted tempi, and now it's a dark square, so this light square bishop can't take, and his king is too far away to try to get to this g1 square. So that's what I do. I push my pawn, promote it to a queen. In fact, here I was thinking of promoting to a knight, but I think promoting to a knight wouldn't have been good because I take with check, he goes here, and now this is very difficult to win still. So take here, take with the queen, and now let's just clean up. I'm just taking all his pieces, check, and here my opponent resigns on move 77, and this was super nice. Because also I played this, I accidentally queued into this game. I didn't want to play this game. I was supposed to play my friend, and it's like 1 a.m. And I literally offer the draw, and he refuses the draw. So I basically I used like some of my best chess abilities to win this game. And yeah, like if you just go back to this game, I think that just ignore what the computer says for most of it, because from a human perspective, like past here, this is super hard for any human to win because my pawn structure is just so good, and my defending's so good. Not to glaze myself, but I have full control of the h, so white's gonna have to make the move, and when they make the move, that's when I'm gonna strike. So if you look at this from a human perspective, I'd actually say white's better. You can say sure, white has I would say black is better. Sure, white has a bishop pair, but you're really gonna sit here and tell me that this dark squared bishop's doing much? It's not. And even with his light squared bishop, I locked all of his pawns on light squares basically, and his pawns on dark squares kill off his own dark squared bishop's movement. His light squared bishop can only come to h5 if it wants to threaten something on here, and even then I'm just going to take it with my rook. So it's from a computer's perspective, yeah, I can see how a computer might be able to win this. Computers are significantly better, but from a human perspective, I don't want to hear that any person with the white pieces that's not like a super grandmaster can sit here and win this with the white pieces if black doesn't do this own pawn break. Now, if you like this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see in the future.